You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our DC Comics preview show. I am here with my man, Gabe. I didn't know that we were going to be able to do this, Gabe. We ended up having a bunch of things to lead into this that we had some technical difficulties.
Well, I'm fine with that. I mean, we're trailblazers here, so if it gets a little bumpy, bear with us. But I think we're going to have a good time.
Yes, I hope so. And we're going to preview 4 main books that are coming out this week. And actually, this is a pretty good week for DC Comics. And a lot of people, it's pretty cool. A lot of people are getting more fired up about some of the stuff, especially the Dawn of DC things. But as we go through these books, and there'll be the Flash, Batman, Steelworks, and Shazam are what we'll focus on. Every time in these books that we get a mention of night terrors with a K, it drove me nuts. It drove me completely nuts. And we do end up kind of alluding to it in the one book especially, but even as we go. And since I haven't really talked to you about that, what do you think about the night terrors, Gabe? You fired up for the night terrors?
Well, I will say that there's at least 2 books in here that we're going to talk about today that allude to night terrors. They don't get deep into it, but it's sort of a lead in. And I'm trying to be positive, but at the same time, I'm not seeing anything that tells me that I should be excited. I don't see anybody telling me why I should be excited for night terrors.
Yeah, well,
it could be good, it could be great, but I don't see DC telling me why it's good or why I should be getting it, and that's I find that a little concerning.
And when we get into it, and we'll talk a little bit about when we get to some books like that, but when we do get into it, the idea where you kind of transition into it is basically the idea of, hey, everybody, these books are going to stop for a while. And if you want to come into night terrors, fine. But nothing was like, oh, my God, I have to get to that night terrors with the way it led into it. But we will start right now with what I think is the big book of the week. And that, of course, is Flash. And it's Flash 800. And it's a celebration, but it's kind of bittersweet. You know what I mean? Because we do have Jeremy Adams' last story. But I think that, I mean, right away, if we're previewing these things and people just want to know, should I go out and get Flash? I would say yes.
I was,
wouldn't you?
On this one, I would say yes. It's an anthology book. There are 5 short stories. You have the outgoing writer, which is Jeremy Adams, and I think there's some good stuff there. You have the incoming writer, Cy Spurrier, who's taking over the title in the next month or a couple months. So you know what you're in for. And then sandwiched right in the middle are classic Flash writers, Jeff Johns, Mark Waid, etc. So and pretty much all of them, maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, all of them are great. So it's more plus than minus.
That
more
is
plus
true.
Than minus.
And the thing is, and forgive me, I don't have a voice right now because I was screaming and yelling on our regular podcast this week. So I woke up this morning. I actually thought I was going to get a hold of you and say, I can't do it. I can't even talk. But the idea in this is, you get a Jeremy Adams story, and most people, I was going to say everyone, but most people are really enjoying or had enjoyed the Jeremy Adams thing. I think that what you might get from this, because usually when you get these type of anniversary things, you do end up where people who haven't been reading Flash may pick it up for a Mark Waid story, or maybe, Jeff Johns, I'll grab that. Hopefully, it's kind of after the fact, but hopefully they read the Jeremy Adams story and maybe go back and check out his run if they haven't, because I thought that story was really fun. And again, I think that this is one of those things. I don't know if everybody will think so, but it reminded me of the Batman the Animated Series Almost Got Him episode. One of the few that I've seen. That's what it feels like. But it does feel like it's celebrating Wally, the family, even all that, even Barry, all that stuff in it, in a way that didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like it was like, oh, here I'm gonna, do narration about how great somebody is. I thought it was a good play, and really was kind of a clever deal of how Jeremy Adams finishing up his run. And I was surprised. I actually thought all these, for some reason, I thought they were all going to be Wally stories. I don't know why, just because we're dealing with Wally now, but there's a pretty cool little deal going on, especially when Mark Waid's doing an Impulse story, which I thought
Yep.
was fun as well. It's kind of funny that he says it takes place between issue 6 and 7 of his run, but I thought that was
Yep.
fun. And you tell me, did you like the Joshua Williamson story?
I thought the Joshua Williams story was very sweet.
It was
It,
sweet.
and I think that's one of the things that'll come through very clearly on this anthology is each one of the short stories has a different tone and kind of takes a look at the Flash canon, the Flash history from different angles and different perspectives. It's
Mhm.
not just like a bunch of random stories. They're all sort of taking it. One focuses on the relationship between Barry and Iris. One focuses on the relationship between Wally and Linda. And so they're just taking it from different angles. So you really get this anthology is kind of better than most because you really get a full picture of everything that's going on within Flash overall from a canon and the family and the history and everything that's going on around it. So I thought it was really
I
well put
agree with
together.
that. I
Yeah, yeah,
agree
yeah.
with everything you just said. It is
Yep.
really one of those. It is a celebration, obviously. I'm
Hmm.
just saying the Joshua Williamson one. Actually, the only reason I want to end up, he ended up blocking me like 2 weeks ago, so I want to dig into him a bit. But it's nice. It's nice enough.
It's
It's
nice.
just the thing is what I said about Jeremy Adams' story. It like didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like okay, I'm going to write a story that's going to be pulling at the heartstrings and shit. Joshua Williamson, it did feel a little bit like that. A little bit of okay, I'm going to sit down and I'll give people what I think. It was okay though,
Yeah,
because you don't see Barry and Iris enough, recently and stuff like that. But that was good. But
yeah.
what's that?
Williamson's story is definitely kind of fan service,
Yeah, it is.
but it's the good kind of fan service. It's
Yeah,
not fan service where it's just trying to uh, put it in front of a terrible story. It's fan service within the context of a good story.
yeah. And
Yep,
with that too, it fits this type of anthology. So I
yep,
can't
yep,
rail into him too much. And he did that Big Barry run, and so that's
yep.
what he would do. But again, I didn't know what to expect going in and what you would get, and I was actually shocked that we got a Hunter Zolomon story from Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
But with Scott Collins, it did seem classic as my dog starts barking. But in
Mhm.
that story, I liked it, but I think that's the one that might not get everybody's deal going. It was very specific. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're kind of getting into review territory. I think that,
I'm not going to go
but
too far
no,
into that,
no,
but
but
still,
just to say, I agree with you that it seems out of place because you're focusing on the villain rather than the hero.
yeah,
But for somebody who is not really super familiar with Hunter
hmm
Zolomon as Zoom, it's a great kind of capsule story to give you the history. And I'm always looking for the sneaky hidden agendas.
yeah, oh,
It
yeah.
wouldn't surprise me if the reason they put that in there is because we're going to see Zoom sometime soon.
I would think so too. And
Yep.
you're going to have to, stop me from getting your review territory, even though I do feel remiss that I did not mention your Predator review. That was
Mm,
I should have started out with that, but it is
I'm
true
not
though
gonna.
with
I'm
that.
never gonna live that down. I'm never gonna live that down.
When I ended up saying a lot of things that I won't live down on the aficionado show, but I'm right with you. When I read that story, and I'm like, what is he setting up here? Because this is not something that's just happening for no reason. It did feel very
Mm,
much a setup for something to go. And then, not to review it, but the Cy Spurrier one, you are going to get a little bit of a sneak peek at what Cy Spurrier's run's going to be about. And without revealing too much, one of the things that it seems like it really by the end goes so much against what we got with Jeremy Adams, like a full 180, and that kind of threw me a little by the end of
yeah,
that story.
same. I mean, one of the big things that I think a lot of people loved, the people who love Jeremy Adams' run, what they love is the family
Yeah, the
aspects.
family.
They,
Exactly.
they live the relationships and how people. It's just like so wholesome. And then when you get to Spurrier's short story, which is a prelude to him taking over the run, his tone is very different,
Yeah,
and he
it is.
has a very different focus. Again, I'm not going to review it, I'm not spoiling it here, but
Mm.
just to say that if you really like and are into what Jeremy Adams did, Spurrier's version of the Flash is going to be a pretty hard left turn. It's going to be very different. That's not to say it's bad. It's just different.
Yeah.
So you just kind of, but at least they give you a flavor of what you're in for, and then what he's setting up very heavily leans into night terrors.
Yeah. Yep.
So we'll see where that goes from here.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that. And again, there are going to be people who will come out and say, well, they're glad that it's that much different. And maybe it should be. I mean, you don't want to end up, why would you get rid of Jeremy Adams and then just have Cy Spurrier show up and do the same thing anyway? But I'm a little worried. After reading that, I'm a little worried of what we're going to end up getting when old September comes around. I don't know about you, but me and you I saw some things that you were saying to some other people as well. And I think that you agree the same with that. But I still, the thing is, if you're just wondering, should I get it? Like we said at the beginning, I think that it's well worth it if you have any interest in the Flash or some cool stories, especially fans of the writers.
Yeah, if you like the Flash, I think this is a good pick for you. You're gonna like it.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll move on to the next book, and I don't know, this one might end up having some people. I don't know, a lot of people are a little down on Chip Zdarsky's Batman. This is a weird way to like we ended the story of going through, to the dimension, the Gotham without Batman, failsafe sent Batman there. And then we came out of that, and a lot of people were confused at how we'd continue, especially with the last page of 135 was all the Zur R's kind of laughing and like, hey, we're going to get into this. It's time for us to fight. I just thought we were going to get a backup that was going to have some Zur adventures, but it seems that that's not the case. And this is going to be a tough one for me not to spoil things because I don't want to spoil stuff, but it is.
Well, let's not spoil it. Come on, don't spoil it.
Here we go. It's Batman 136, written by Chip Zdarsky and Balin Ortega. There is a backup with Chip Zdarsky with Jorge Corona. And what you are going to get is a little bit of the, continuing repercussions of what happened with failsafe and going. And you have a theory. Do you want to tell your theory, or do you think that's what?
Well, I'm gonna tease the theory. I'm not gonna give it away because you have to wait for the main review. So, Batman 136 is basically Batman trying to reacclimate himself back into Gotham after coming home. So if you've been following the series, he lost his hand. He's got a robotic hand. Everybody's worried about him because he's not taking time to rest. And he goes through this bunch of, again, I'm not reviewing it, just going to kind of give you the solicit level synopsis. But then there's the twist at the end, and the twist at the end kind of paints a very opens the door for a super huge twist for all of Zdarsky's run.
Yeah,
I'm not going to spoil what it is. You have to read it for yourself. But if it is a twist that I think it is, and Zdarsky goes where I think he could go if he swings big, it's going to a lot of people are going to be talking about it. A lot of people are going to be talking about it because it's a big deal. If he goes all the way with it, it's going to be a big deal twist.
And if he goes that way, I think a lot of people might be yelling as well. Again, you'll find out. And just to remind everybody, if you're listening right now, Gabe's reviews for all of these will be up on our website on actually Monday night into Tuesday. So at midnight on Monday, you'll get to read his reviews. That's at WeirdScienceDCComics.com. And then I'll be doing some video reviews for a lot of these during the week. But yeah, Gabe has a theory that I'm telling you, if it's me and it's your theory's correct, I'm going to lose my mind. But it's like a segue
people are going to yell at him. They're not going to yell at him as bad as Zeb Wells on Spider-Man.
No,
they're not going to tell him that bad.
But
it won't be that bad. But it's going to. I think some people will, if he does it, some people will like it a lot.
Yeah, some people will.
And some people will just hate it. It's going to be one of those ones where you can go either way. You're not going to be in the middle.
And it's funny because in this issue, even like you said, you see Bruce trying to get his thoughts together. You see him trying to figure out what he's got to do. He's actually here and saying to everybody, what did I miss? What has gone on? It's funny, too, because at points he plays it out as like, ooh, what did I miss those 8 months I was gone? But then it's even mentioned in it. It's only been weeks, but still, Gotham moves quickly, right? So one of the things in this is also setting up the Gotham War coming up in September with Batman versus Selina. If you're a Batcat fan, you're going to get a little bit of that and see how that works out. But really what the big deal is just Batman trying to figure out where he goes from here. And he is thinking of everybody else as well, but also with him. And the only thing that I will not spoil but say is he kind of seems really, really angry and pissed off, and that might play in what your theory is as well by the end, because, he's trying to get back into, Gotham that was taken over again by Failsafe. And just as one last thing, Failsafe is still a thing. People
Yep.
had asked me saying, "Oh, this was ridiculous. Failsafe just disappeared." It is reference. You do start talking about that, and they're trying to figure out stuff themselves. So it wasn't anything that Zdarsky left behind. That seems to be going forward something as well. But it really does end up, and the backup ends up kind of giving you some information of what happened in the past that led to everything. It's okay. It's what Zdarsky has been doing a lot with it. But I thought that
Yep.
overall, it's a pretty good issue. It ends up setting up a bunch of things. And again, if you ended up not liking, hey, Batman jumped off the moon and landed on Earth, that sort of thing. This seems to be not grounded. It is still wacky, but it seems like that was all for a purpose. That's might have been, like you said, that by the end people might be more happy about it because of the idea that it was more of a plan than maybe we actually knew about or saw before. And I always like those twists. I like when you
Yep.
find out later, like, oh my God, this was pretty clever all along. So I'm hoping. Though, again, I have my little theory. It's not quite yours, but very similar. But I think people will. It's weird because, like I said, I know a lot of people personally that hate this Zdarsky run. They just don't like it, and I don't know that this is going to win them over fully. But it's good issue. It's starting to kind of pull things in. What do you think?
Yeah, and it's hard not to give it away because the
Yeah.
twist at the end could if the twist goes as far as Zdarsky could take it, the people who have not liked Zdarsky's run might have a reason to get turned around on that,
Yeah,
which
that
is
is
a good thing.
true.
The second
It's
thing
true.
the second thing I want to mention about this issue is the artist is Belen Ortega,
Yeah.
who I think this is the first time she's been on a Batman title, or at least this one. Her art looks great.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like it kind of has a lot of a. It's very similar to Dan Moore's look in
Hmm.
just the way that she has like really solid characters with very clean, thin lines. Her art is fantastic. So if you want some really great Batman art, you're gonna like this one too.
Yeah, and actually overall the books that we're going through, the art's pretty good overall. I think that
Yep.
one of the things though, and with people, complaining about a lot of things at both the big two and stuff like that, for the most part, the art's been pretty solid overall. Till you get Riley
Mhm.
Rossimo in the joint, then it
Ugh.
goes wrong. But still, he
Ugh.
has his fans. They're not here talking right now, but he has his fans. But overall, I think that art, I'd never seen anybody saying like, "Oh my God, I hate DC the last 3 years because the art's been bad." It's more about the sus writing and just some agendas and things like that, which
Yeah.
kind of sets us up. And again, this will be pretty quick this week. We're trying to kind of ease in and try to figure out how we do this. But we'll move to the next book, which is a new number one, Dawn of DC, and a book that I don't know, for some reason, I don't know why I thought Michael Dorn Worf might end up, maybe setting up it's a pretty basic issue. I mean, it's Steelworks number
Yeah.
one, written by Michael Dorn with art by Sami Basri. What did you think of it?
Well, again, I don't want to spoil it, but I thought it was basic but solid.
Yeah.
DC and Marvel have a history of bringing in celebrity writers, and it goes terribly. This was not terrible. It was
No?
okay. It was solid. As a matter of fact, I think Steelworks number one from Michael Dorn. I'm a huge Star Trek fan, going
Mhm.
back years, like decades, years. So when I heard his name on, it, I was like, "Oh, Michael Dorn. We'll see. Well, please don't mess it up. Please don't mess it up, Michael
Don't
Dorn."
make
He
me
did
hate
not.
Worf.
Don't make me hate Worf. He did not mess it up.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I think Steelworks number one is the best because this story, what's weird is because this first issue has been sort of already, I don't want to say spoiled a little bit, but sort of
Yeah.
already introduced in Action Comics at least 2 or 3 issues in a row.
Hmm.
So you're sort of coming into like replaying the same event, but to continue it further, this was the best version of that.
It was.
So especially if you look at the last
Well,
backups,
Gabe, they didn't say Hammer Time, is what you're
well,
going to say.
they didn't say Hammer
No.
Time. They're not using lots of slang.
Nope.
It was a solid issue, and as long as you can keep it solid and tell a clean, clear story all the way through, I'm happy.
Yep.
It's not the greatest thing in the world. It's not going to blow you away, but it's a good, clean, solid issue, and it gets you, and it focuses more on the moral dilemma of what Steel is trying to do
Hmm.
versus like just punching things and blowing up bad guys. There's a place for that, and that's a good thing to do. But he's interesting, sort of a moral dilemma, and I'm interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I agree. And the thing is, with these Dawn of DC books, you could even say, like something like a Green Lantern. There were people who complained saying, "Oh, it was so basic. We didn't get much from the issue." But you do have to set things up. You do have to get going. And I think you're better
Mhm.
set doing it in a solid, but maybe not go too deep into it and get people involved. I think it was well played out. And I'll agree. I'm a Star Wars fan, or at least I was. And the idea
Mm.
where I go in, Worf, I hope I hate this so I can yell about Star Trek and how much I hate Star Trek, but it's solid. It really is solid. And
Yep.
I actually from the get-go, because when you do get these celebrity writers, a lot of times you end up going in, you hate to say it, you look for things. Okay, do they get the deal? Is that the narration that starts it off right away? You end up like, yeah, he knows what he's doing. This is pretty good.
Yep.
Like, there's not any part in that issue. And Dwayne's talking about Bruce Campbell on the Sergeant Rock book, which you really liked. You were reviewing that as well, and that is
Yeah.
another case of some cool things. Now, behind the scenes, do we know for a fact? And I'm still playing the Batman deal. I got to get to the Steelworks. But even when you're going with the thing, you don't know if there's somebody helping him or whatever. But I'm assuming it's just Michael Dorney's doing, and it's really good. It's solid. There's nothing wrong with it. You get, like you said, the setup of how Steele wants to go forward, how John Henry wants to go forward. And we're going to have to see the repercussions of that. But what you said is true. If you already have read the Action Comics backups, it's kind of a twofold deal, though. Because if
Mhm.
you already read the Action Comics back and you hear that, oh, they go, you might like, oh, I don't want that stuff again. But you're right, it's the better version. It
Yep.
actually, not that it didn't make sense, it's just better played out. And you said that you don't
Yep.
have to rely on slang. You don't end up having to yell hammer time. You don't have to do goofy stuff like that. This is more of a serious deal and going forward. And it seems like John Henry has an idea of what he wants to do going forward, and he is going to do it. And if the super family doesn't like that, they might have to, lump it here. But I did like
Yeah.
it as a start. And it just, if anybody had read the Superwoman book back in the DC YOU back in the day, or actually it was the beginning of Rebirth, you have Lana Lang in here as well, still girlfriend to Steel. So that's something we haven't seen in a little bit. So that ended up, I was like, okay, at least we're going with the continuity of what we're dealing with. So that was something that I didn't expect, but I like that as well. So
We haven't seen that in a while, but
no,
also what's happening is that relationship is starting to mimic what's going on the CW Lois and
okay,
Superman show,
yeah.
where John Henry Irons is in the show from an alternate Earth, but he is starting to kind of develop a little bit of a romantic relationship with Lana Lang.
Well, that's cool then.
So,
Then you get
so,
some
so there's
synergy.
so you're bringing in some synergy, and to the other point that you made about it's too basic. If there was one complaint that I had bigger than anything else about the new 52,
Hmm.
is that they said it's going to be relatable and fresh start. We're going to do a clean break with everything.
Sure.
But exactly. So when you picked up a lot of those issues, they were just coming in the middle of stuff, and the everything was confusing.
Hmm.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. Dawn of DC, at least for the issues that are getting back to basics, like Steelworks,
Hmm.
like Green Lantern, like to a certain degree Green Arrow,
Yeah.
and some of these Shazam as another one.
Shazam's a good
Uh,
one. Yeah.
Shazam, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
They're just starting with a good, solid, clean, basic story, and that's okay. And I kind of like that, and I think that's good overall because that helps get new readers on board, which is what DC wants.
Yeah, and that's where you get that kind of shame of it, that it does feel, it's not a reboot, right? It's
Yeah.
not, but it felt like, and I had said it for a while now since Dawn of DC was even announced. I kind of wish that these books came out together, and I wish that you had it like, boom, oh man, this is awesome, this Dawn of DC. What can I read next? You had to kind of wait. Now we're getting a lot
Mhm.
more, so there are things to go to. But this Night Terror is bullcrap. I think that Steelworks ends up going through Night Terrors, though. That will actually be going on in the background, and you'll still be able to get
Yeah.
that at least. But some of these others, I mean, you're getting momentum up, and people are finally getting excited about DC again. And then you have the spookiest months of the year, July and August. This doesn't make sense, and it's just a shame. But I do think you're right that some of the things like a Steelworks, there's going to be a lot of people who may be interested in it, but never really read much of Steel because there hasn't been too much of Steel, and so I think it serves well going basic and going. But I do think it's a decent number one issue. Not my favorite Dawn of DC start, but it's there. It's at least in the middle, if not, edging towards the top because it does its job. That's what Michael Dorn
It,
gets
it
there and does its job, and that's all I want.
it'll be a very good jumping on point.
Yeah,
If somebody's interested in steel, the modern incarnation of steel with Nat and everything that's going
yeah.
on with Steelworks, his relationship, it's a good start. It's a good jumping on point.
Yep, I agree 100%. But we'll move
Yep.
to the last book that we'll go into in detail here, and right there, even in the preview, it's spoiled because so we can say there are dinosaurs again in this. And me and you were talking beforehand about the idea of the dinosaurs, and when we were talking about this on our regular podcast, Eric on the DC Comic Podcast, it drove him nuts. He doesn't like to have fun. So the dinosaurs really threw him off, and he's like, "Oh, this is bull crap." And I think I said to him, "Why are you so upset? We're not going to see these dinosaurs again." I kind of get dinosaurs in this. It's not the
We get
main
dinosaurs
deal,
again.
but they
Yep.
do show up, and maybe it's okay only because and you like it more than me. But the
I
idea,
do.
it does show you that even something goofy like dinosaurs from space actually have some repercussions and may come back, and everything fits
Yep.
in. So that might serve it well, but it's Mark Waid and Dan Mora. It's issue number 2, and I mean Dan Mora's art's it's worth the price of admission just because you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
this is
Right,
something that you can. What's
right
that?
now, right now, Mark Waid and Dan Mora are the A team of DC right now. You put these two guys on a book, and it just it sings to me. I don't know, maybe not
No.
everybody feels that way, but to me, it sings because Mora's art is fantastic. Wade knows these characters; he
Mhm.
knows how to speak into their voice. And yeah, right. So we're talking about Shazam number 2.
Mhm.
It Billy Batson's still going through some. If you read the last issue, he had some kind of weird emotional outburst. He doesn't know why. This kind of continues that mystery. I like this issue a lot. It definitely leans into the Silver Age silliness a bit
Mhm.
with modern art. So it's a kind of a funky mix, but there's a lot of fun to it,
Yeah.
and I think why it works for me because it works in the context of it's really written. I hate to say it like this. It's written from Billy's point. It's written to appeal to somebody who's at Billy's age.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say that's not to say I'm a little kid or something like that, but I think it feels like a kid's adventure.
Mhm.
So from that point of view, if you're looking for like a mature adult kind of Superman level aged type of Shazam, yeah, you're not going to get that. This is going to feel silly and kind of Silver Age weird. But if you think of it as like a comic written down to the not down to the level that it's not intelligent or not mature, but it really kind of takes a kid's eye view of the world with the kind of wacky, silly things that he gets involved with. And so, if you view it from that perspective, I think you'll like it a lot. But I can see how some people might think it's too silly or too weird or just not taking things
Yeah,
seriously. But
I think
I
that
get it.
the character goes well with goofy
Yep.
fun, and again, you're going to get that. But what I really do also like what we talked about with Jeremy Adams' Flash run and things like that. You still get the Shazamily, which I don't know why I hate saying that, but you get the
Mhm.
family, and the big play continues to be why can't Billy share the powers with, especially Freddie, and it's one of the things where Freddie in this really spells out some things, and you do feel bad for him. Why he doesn't want the
Yeah.
power to just I want attention or whatever. It's his thing. That's his thing that he wants, and to help him out and to make him kind of become normal. It's a weird play for him to want power because he wants to be like everybody else, not above them, but in the same way where Billy's struggling because suddenly he's getting these thoughts of I'm bigger, and we saw it at the end of last issue where he just burst out and attacked people that he was saving, and they deal with that, but you do have some fun as well. But I did like the stuff with the family, and I love the idea because you have all of them, Darla especially, and Darla's like trying to like. I don't know. She seemed like she's trying to trick Billy into giving like, "Hey, maybe we should." And he's like, "Listen,
Yeah.
Darla, I tried all this, but I do really like it." The only thing that I can say negative about it that worries me is that at some point, and I do agree, I said this is a book that should lean on that crazy stuff and the Silver Age, and I love that. But the big play is eventually you're going to have to do some more. So, and I think it's being set up, the stuff with what's happening with the powers. It's going to get a little darker as we go, and I'll be there for that as well. But right now, it does seem like they just want to have some fun And
Mhm.
Dan Mora's art looks great and throughout the whole
Yeah.
deal. Now, the funny play is me and you both were fooled by that first issue because we
Yep.
thought that the wizard was being sus, and we ended up Mark Wade came to the website and actually told you he was nice about it. He said that wasn't actually the wizard in the shadows. And then by now, if people have read it, you have your own ideas of who or what it might be, right? So with that though, now I just want to know where the hell the wizard is. I'm sitting there like, well, where is he then? And you do see a gathering of a lot of things going on, and I hope that the
Mhm.
continuity works out, especially with what has recently happened in the Wonder Woman books. They mention a character, I'm like, is he there or whatnot? We'll have to see. But even if they don't, I don't mind if somebody forgets what happened in the Clunrad stuff. I think you might agree as well because that
Yeah, I mean,
stuff
if
was
the
terrible.
yeah, the Clune stuff. I mean, I know that's off track, but Wonder
Yeah.
Woman, I think 800 comes out next week, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
it's coming up
Uh,
soon.
and that's the end of the Clunrad run on that. As a matter of fact, I think that's the end of this month is the end of both Batgirls and Wonder Woman. So that's
Yeah.
officially it for the Clunrad group in DC. Yeah, the last issue of Wonder Woman ended with, I think, a sort of tease of Night Terrors, but not exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shazam number two gives a very tiny hint that it's leaning into Terrors at the very end,
Yeah.
in I think in the second epilogue. Um,
Yes, it
so
is.
so I think the great shame of Shazam number two is they're going to put on the brakes to go to Night
Yeah,
Terrors
I
before
know.
the store's even gotten started. Because I mean, like I said, for me, you and I disagree a little bit as much as how much we like this. I
Hmm.
like this issue a lot just because I like silly, wacky, goofy fun,
Hmm.
and there was a lot of silly, wacky, goofy fun with fantastic art. I mean, I
Oh
just
yeah.
love Dan Moore's art.
And I think people
So
will love it like
yeah,
you. I'm
yeah,
not saying
yeah.
I'm right, but I'm telling you, I'm just a little worried. And by the end, like you said, leaning into Night Terrors, and I'm just like, really, like, darn it, like,
The
why are we
timing is
doing
just
that?
really terrible.
Yeah,
Timing is really terrible for
two
Night Terrors because
issues.
some of these issues are just starting. Shazam just starting to get
Hmm.
going. Green Lantern just starting
Yep.
to get going. Um, Steelworks, I think
Yeah, I
is out of
think
that
that
loop a little bit.
continues. It's out of the loop, so that'll
Yeah,
keep
but
going. But
some of these
still,
titles are just starting to get going, and then all of a sudden you're putting the brakes on. Just terrible timing from
it
DC.
is.
But
It's
we'll see
awful.
how it plays out. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and when you see this, I mean, they're really trying to, I wouldn't say trick you, but they're really trying to lean in of like, oh, get this, guys. You love the two issues of Shazam. Well, you can still read Shazam and Night Terrors, but then it even says like Shazam Night Terrors number one. At least they're separating it, but it's just nonsense, and it's going to derail things, and it's not going to deal with what we're doing because it's in the Night Terrors with a K, which I always say. But overall, it is a shame. I wish that they ended up. Night Terrors is fine. Keep these books going though. And I know that like their crazy play of, well, if we do that, then people won't read Night Terrors. Well, if that's the case, then Night Terrors is not on the top of your list of, being confident about things. If you can't just put it out there and hope that or know that it's going to sell, and you have to shut everything else down, that's kind of bullcrap. And you're making people who don't know or whatnot go to that. And I hope it's good. I'm not very confident in that. I'm going to be, cautiously optimistic. I will be, but I think that it's going to end up being one of those things. And me and you have talked about it, even with Wes, over Thinking Critical, about the idea
Yep.
more of a jumping off point than a jumping on point for people. And you take things away for 2 months, and people start finding other things, and they forget about stuff, and it's a shame. And so I hope that
Yeah,
doesn't
I'm
happen.
reminded. I'm reminded very heavily of Future State,
Yeah,
where they
yeah,
were trying to do a bunch of things, and we said we're going to do this big thing called Future State. And depending on your point of view, I thought most of Future State was garbage. They had one or two good things in there, but a lot of it was just not good at all.
yeah.
And I think a lot of people just sort of threw up their hands and decided to walk
I know.
away. And what we don't want to see, and that was almost 2 years ago at this point.
Yeah,
We don't want to see that it happen again, because all you're doing is it's like culling the herd. You're basically you're
yeah.
losing
That's what
losing
happened.
loyal readers after that. We don't want to happen. We don't want that to happen
And
again.
add into the fact that even since Future State, and like you say, some of it, most of it was garbage, and especially when we're thinking back at it now, like most of it really doesn't matter anyway. So when you think
Yep.
about it, you end up having that. Then you end up having Infinite Frontier, into Just League Incarnate, into like everything was supposed to be the next big thing, and they kept resetting, like soft resets, but to lead to Dark Crisis, which I thought was just bad. And so you end up when you get this like we're not at a point where they need to announce another event. They don't need to like you go back, say Convergence back in the day, at least that had a reason. They were moving offices. So they had that. But since then, this nonsense, it seemed like, Future State was just, hey, we have some notes left over from Dan to Deal. Let's throw it out there and try to, get
Yeah.
some sales and stuff. But with that,
Yes, it was 5G leftovers.
yeah, that's all it was.
Yeah.
And it's weird because at one point, at the New 52, the big play was to have like these 1 month events in September. That was a big deal. You had, the Villains Month, and then you had Zero Issue, all these things then. But then they've gotten into this 2 month bull crap that just is so annoying. And it is. And I ended up where Dwayne said it's a speed bump, and it's a summer speed bump, and it is. And
Yep.
hopefully, what really gets me upset is really finally, after talking about this nonsense for so long, we have been in the valley, not a peak. We're starting to get up to a bit of a peak, and then they do this. I like when people are
Yeah.
excited about DC stuff, and I like when people are like, "Oh my God," like actually defending some stuff. That's like, holy crap, what are they doing now? And then you just throw that in there, like, oh,
The only thing I can think of is that comics. Most people don't realize this, but comics tend to be a little bit seasonal
yeah,
in the sense that there are certain periods of the year where sales and traffic and interest are
yeah, yeah,
high, and then some July, like July, August, early September, tends to be a dip.
yeah,
That tends to be a low point. So the only thing I can think of really is that maybe they targeted night terrors into that period because they want to take advantage of the dip, because and they think that nothing's going on, so we don't have any competition, so
yeah.
maybe we do that
It's
there.
like summer
Maybe,
replacement
yeah,
shows and TV. Is
yeah,
what
yeah,
it seems like. Yeah, keep
yeah.
going though.
Yeah, but I mean that's basically it. I think they're just trying to take advantage of the low spot, seeing if they can boost their numbers by putting an event in there. But the juxtaposition of Night Terrors with Dawn of DC just doesn't seem like it's a good fit.
No,
And if they pull it off, it's great. I want them to pull it off. I
yeah.
want them to succeed, but they're just not giving me a reason to get excited about Night Terrors, and I'm still waiting for somebody to show me why it's going to be good
Yeah.
or what it's even about.
And
I have
then,
an
yeah,
idea.
yeah.
I'll talk to you offline because I suddenly got a new theory as we
Oh
were talking it
my,
through.
a
So we'll
theory.
see how it goes.
Yeah,
I have
and
another theory, so we'll see how it goes. But it involves a spoiler, so I'm not going to say it.
okay.
We'll talk offline.
Well, and you do end up, and I'll just go with our regular logo on the deal. You do end up with night terrors and the things like that. Like they're starting to announce things like that Gotham War that in the solicits for that and the announcements are coming out of night terrors. I'm like, oh, here we go. Like some people were actually giving DC some credit at one point because we didn't really know what it was going on. Was okay, well, it's a separate thing. We don't have to get involved with it if we don't. So that's cool. And most of them were saying they weren't getting involved, but then you start hearing other things, oh, we're going to do that. And that ties into that. So we'll have to see how it works out. But I'm worried. But you are right. Seasonal, it does bring to mind the idea of, spookiest months of the year, July and August. That's what really threw me off right away. We're
Very
getting a
strange.
horror deal in July and August, but hey, that's how things happen. And we're sure to get like an anthology somewhere along the line, those Dog Days of Summer anthology or, summer swimming special or those nonsense things I can't stand. But
Yep.
overall, though, I think that most of the things, the four books that we talked about, I think are well worth checking out this week. There's some other things like a John Kent Superman. We didn't have it on the list. That's something you will be reviewing. And I
Yep.
saw your just as you didn't really love it. So, that's a little, tip to people if they're wondering, if you want to say anything about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all I can say is that this 6-issue miniseries is Tom Taylor's goodbye to John Kent, and if you liked what he was doing on the main John Kent title, this is starting to turn out to be more of the same.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that should tell you everything you need to know right there.
Yeah.
I won't
So what
spoil
you're
it, but
saying is
we'll
not
have a
many
review.
people are going to like it. Because a lot of
I,
people didn't like that, but
I'm a terrible predictor. I can't
yeah,
tell you that for sure. But
you don't
but
speak for everybody, I
I
guess.
don't speak for everyone. But the things that you liked about John Kent, there's more of that. The things you didn't like about John Kent, there's more of that. So depending on which side of the fence you're on, that's where it's going to land for you.
And my whole deal with that 6-issue mini that's going on right now, I really thought that this was going to iron out some of the stuff with Ultraman and really get some, like, let's get to the nitty gritty. Let's see if there were effects. John is still upset and all. and then that just ends immediately. And now it's just to get to the Injustice world, which I didn't. I like Injustice. You know, a lot of people
Yeah.
don't like it. I really do like it. I didn't need to go back in the regular continuity to get to the Justice world. I thought that was a misplay, but that's what he likes to do. But like you said
Yep.
too, I think you mentioned earlier, there is Dark Knights of Steel number 11 comes out. Maybe we did that off the deal, but that's coming out from Tom Taylor. People have been enjoying that, but there's been delays. But he ended up saying at one point, listen, I'm going to do that on my own pace. It's going to come out eventually. And it wasn't a real priority because he's been doing some other things. But that comes out this week. You also get Poison Ivy. She's going, and we'll get back to Gotham proper. She ended up there at the end of last issue meeting up with Harley. I don't know how that's going to play out. Series has been up and down. It's been very odd, the way it started out to what it ended up being. And then you get one of my least favorite books that some people like, but the Joker, the Man Who Stopped Laughing. I made the joke that that should be called Jimmy, the Guy Who Stopped Caring, because I don't give a crap about that book, and I think Matthew Rosenberg is a hack. But that's just me. I end up saying that, and everybody says I have a vendetta. And I said I have a vendetta against bad writing is what I have. And that book has done nothing. It's tread water for 9 issues. And so hopefully something happens. I have not read it yet, so I can't even give any sort of like wink, wink or anything. But I hope something happens in that book. But yeah, Kane asking, Dark Knights of Steel is still going on. This is the penultimate issue. Again, I haven't read it yet, and that's something you're not really following much of, right?
Not really, but I did take a look at the Joker book. If you liked what like the Tom Taylor run on the John Kent miniseries,
Yeah.
it's more of the same.
Yeah, yeah.
So
There-
so that
so
should
what
tell
you're
you.
telling me is nothing happens. That's the part of that. I mean,
Uh,
here you go. Maybe a spoiler, but that book has done nothing. It tries. I'm starting to get angry now. Hey, you
yeah,
sus, Gabe.
I'm just I'm trying to give you the news without giving you the
Yeah.
spoilers.
Do we get another Joker baby? Can we get that, please?
There is a backup.
Yeah,
It
there
is
always
it,
is.
it is by the who's the artist that did the Joker baby? It was
Frank Avila.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's back on the backup, and yeah,
I
it's
like
more
his art.
it's more silliness.
Yeah, it's more.
I like his art for certain things. It's
Yeah.
very stylized.
It is style.
So I don't think it works for everything, and I'm not sure I like it here, but it is what it is. So yeah, the backup is just more silly nonsense.
Yeah, his art definitely works for like a horror type deal. Even like
Yeah.
the Archie Afterlife with Archie and stuff that he did. That I think it fits that very well. But the idea, I'm telling you, to this day, 9 issues we're gonna have of this nonsense book, and anything that anybody would say, if you're like, oh, what's that book about? They'll still only bring up that Joker baby, which was a backup story that meant nothing. That's why that is my proof positive. That book drives me nuts. I might have to do a review on the deal. So that is it. We're gonna get out of here. Again, like I said, we're gonna kind of iron this out, maybe expand the deal. I just wanted to make sure that we could get things going and how we had to work it out. And we did end up having some problems when we first went to start, that I wanted to get more of a podcast out of this as well, but I had to kind of bail on that thought. I wanted to double dip is what I was doing. But overall, like I said, Gabe's reviews for all of these will be up Monday at midnight. You'll end up being able to check what he thinks of these properly with spoilers, because we do have those, and that'll be at WeirdScienceDCComics.com. And also on the YouTube, if you had been watching some stuff like our podcast, we always put the podcast up each week. This month, or this week actually, was an annuals week. Stuff from last week was an annuals week at DC, and every time that happens, we do put the podcast as a Patreon only. Me and Eric ended up talking about Detective Comics and Power Girl Special. Talked about those 2 books. It still ended up being 3 hours long, yelling and screaming. I'm telling you, that Power Girl, we went on forever just laughing and joking about that, because that was pretty bad. Plus, we had our Mount Rushmore of DC creators was something that asked us to do. So we did that as well. But if you did want to listen to that, you could go over to the Patreon, patreon.com/weird science. And right now you can actually go, and even going forward, but you can go and get a 7-day free trial and check out that podcast or everything else we do. We have a bunch of things on there, a lot of reading club stuff like Walking Dead podcast, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles podcast, all that nonsense. All that nonsense all rolled up into one. But we have a bunch of good books coming out this week. I'm kind of pumped up to talk about them as we go forward because there's some really cool stuff going on. And Night Terrors is right around the corner. So enjoy things while you can. That's what I'm saying. But thanks for joining me, Gabe. Thanks, everybody, for showing up and chatting with us and whatnot. We'll iron it out. Like I said, we'll get this a little more official. Get it the deal. I tried to do some things, and I always go on the cheap, Gabe. What happens? I'm not a Rockefeller here. I'm not a handsome man either, but we'll end up where we'll figure some stuff out and get some stuff more streamlined. But thanks, everybody. We'll be back next week to do it as long as Gabe is willing. And that'll be that. So thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you all later.
You are all weirdos.